Chicago, and I'm very pleased to welcome you here this afternoon. I think we have a terrific panel for you, and we're very excited to discuss the issues that we're going to bring to you this afternoon. So I want to welcome you to Chicago, and I also want to start out by thanking Dr. Shahidapur, I know he was in here, Mohammed, for hosting us at his wonderful facility, and we're very excited about the leadership that he's brought to the issues that we're addressing in our industry today. I'm very enthusiastic about the events that will take place over the next couple days and the discussions. For some of you, these will be new discussions. You will be introduced to new concepts, and they will be very exciting to you. For me and my team at ComEd, we've been thinking and talking about these concepts for a number of years. But we're always learning, and I'm grateful to be here and to continue on the learning course, and also to hear about these issues from a variety of vantage points. And I think what you'll hear today in this panel discussion is from leaders in other utility companies who are further along the course than we are at ComEd, who've thought about quality and upgrading and modernizing the system and customer focus, have been thinking about that and are further down the path, and I think it will make for a great discussion. As the representative of ComEd, Chicago's electric utility, I want to welcome everyone and say just a few words about the significance of your being in Chicago to talk about these things. Chicago and ComEd itself largely are the birthplace of the modern electric industry structure. Of course, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, and we've all heard about the famous battle between Edison and Westinghouse over AC and DC, and all those folks resided out east. But Thomas Edison sent his personal assistant, Sam Insull, out to the Midwest in the late 1800s to start a utility here in Chicago. He started Commonwealth Edison. And what is most interesting about Commonwealth Edison's history, other than the notoriety that Sam brought to it, he was also a genius. And he really designed the model for our industry, and it's the model that we work with today. He put together the central station generation operating model, and he also put together the state regulatory economic model and exported that throughout the United States and to some extent around the world. And we all still live with that model today, and it's been about 100 years. And we're here today to start to change that. And I think that as we reinvent Sam's model, I think this is the right place to do it, and I think he'd be very much with us on that path. So I'm enthusiastic about that. I am also enthusiastic that this dialogue has expanded beyond the electric utility industry. When I look at the entities and the people who are here discussing this today, it's very encouraging and inspiring. The Joyce Foundation, Silver Spring Network from the Silicon Valley, General Electric, startup companies like Intelligent Generation, General Motors, OnStar, Argonne, National Laboratory, the Environmental Defense Fund, CUB, many state officials, our own Commerce Commission, Chairman Doug Scott, and representatives from a number of our communities. I see Casey from Oak Park sitting right in front of me. So the question of the electric grid and its role in the new economy is clearly a policy question that's weighing on the best minds in the country. To that point, I want to express my personal gratitude to the Galvin Electricity Initiative and my deep sympathies to the Galvin family with Bob Galvin's passing. Bob Galvin has many, many wonderful legacies, but his entry into the electric industry with his initiative is really a gift to those of us in the industry and a gift to our future. Bob recognized long before it became a popular topic that our electric system was on the verge of a needed revolution, and he honed in immediately on the proposition that modernizing the electric grid was about our future. He has applied his collaborative and innovative approach to this task, as to all others that he has ventured into, and I'm certain that we will make him proud. Today we are fortunate to have Bob's first lieutenant as we turn toward our panel discussion, and I'm honored to introduce to you Jim Buckman. For the past 20 years, Jim dedicated his career to helping Bob Galvin teach and spread the word about quality. First as president and executive director of the Minnesota Council on Quality, then as executive director of the Joseph M. Jurin Center for Leadership in Quality. Jim has had the great privilege of documenting how great quality leaders transform businesses to achieve levels of performance never before thought possible. Some of the businesses include the Mayo Clinic, which over the last several years has transformed itself into an organization that strives for zero defects across its medical practice. And Hutchinson Technology, a Minnesota manufacturer who used quality to innovate and build precision parts for CD disk drives that now dominate worldwide sales for the simple reason that their drives do not fail. A couple years ago, Jim was recruited by Bob Galvin to help the electricity industry leaders leverage quality methods as a means for achieving perfection in our industry. I'd like to thank Bob for his efforts. I'd like to thank John Kelly and Kurt Yeager for their efforts with the Galvin Initiative. And I want to introduce you to Jim Buckman. These people are making real change in our industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann, for those very kind words. All of us, I think, are here today because of Bob Galvin. And I have had the remarkable privilege, as Ann said, of working with Bob in a variety of settings for a number of years. And he has always pushed the envelope. And for people who are interested in quality, the pursuit of quality at some kind of a micro level or process level, or people are chasing out defects, those things are really important. But Bob's thinking has been for about 40 years now that we need to figure out a way to transfer these systems and these methods and these ways of thinking to larger targets. So working on entire enterprises like Motorola during the 1980s and Ford during the 1980s and many others around the globe, Bob started thinking about the transformation of society based on quality methods and quality thinking a long time ago. So he was, as always, decades ahead of his time. And for us, the challenge is to try and look at the complex, messy systems that surround the electricity system in the United States. Electrons behave in more or less constant ways, but the way that we organize around that and the way our communities think about it, and both the technologies, the politics, the weather, the climates, the topographies in all of our areas that we come from, they are all different. And the histories of the various utilities and the communities that they serve, they are all different. And so for us, the challenge is to take these things that we think we know how to use in one setting and see if we can apply them to much more complex settings. So that is the pursuit of perfection. It includes both quality and innovation. The organizations that are represented here today, in addition to Ann and ComEd, and by the way, I wanted to thank and congratulate ComEd for the leadership that they have displayed in trying to take their community, their state, their city into a different kind of future. So the integrity of the utility system as founded by Sam Insel is critical, but it has to change. And without leaders like Ann and Mike and Teri and a lot of other people of ComEd, it would not change. So my thanks again to ComEd for their willingness to change themselves and move a community along the way. We have other organizations visiting us today, and I'm really pleased to be able to recognize and thank Mike Niggli from San Diego Gas and Electric for being here. Mike, you want to raise your hand? Mike is the president and chief operating officer of the electric utility in San Diego. And as with all of California, San Diego participated in one of the crudest and least successful attempts at deregulation a decade ago. How many of you are familiar with that? During the course of that deregulation, virtually all the utilities in the state wound up with very bad reputations because they were the ones whose names were on the power bills that went to people that charged them $500 or $1,000 for a kilowatt hour. So it had obvious challenges. But from that time in the early 2000s, how many of you are aware that SDG&E, or San Diego area rather, just had a massive blackout, what, 3 weeks ago, Mike, 4 weeks ago? September 8th. How many of you knew about that? Total blackout. Not their fault. The problem allegedly originated in Arizona, and Mike will tell you more about that. But here's the kicker, and this is the stuff that you might not say. In that decade, since the original deregulation that soured everybody until now, they have made so many changes and so many improvements, and their respect with their consumers has been achieved or recreated such that they got back, almost everybody back online within 12 hours, which is absolutely remarkable. And in the old days, before smartening up, it would have been 4 or 5 days. So for those of you who are not familiar with all of the effects of so-called smart grid, there's one big one for you. You can get done in a total all-out blackout back online in a half a day instead of 4 or 5 days. How many of you live in the northern suburbs? You might appreciate that. So that's one dimension. The other is their customers thought so well of them that, are you ready for this? They sent candy, flowers, postcards. A grade school class had this large poster, you know, the "We Love Yous" and all that stuff, all like kids do. Sent those things to the electric utility. So I want you to think in terms of what is possible for us in the pursuit of systems-wide innovation that you'll be hearing about from Mike Niggli. And after Mike is done with his comments, we also are very privileged to have with us Teri Ivaniszyn, the Senior Director of Florida Power and Light. Teri, you want to raise your hand? So for those of us who are longtime quality weenies, we all know that Florida Power and Light won the Deming Prize in the late 1980s, the first and one of the few American companies that have ever won it. On the other hand, there was an upheaval in the senior leadership and the board of directors shortly after that, and they decided to more or less uproot their efforts. They have begun regenerating their quality improvement effort under their new leadership, beginning with Lou Hay in the mid-2000s. And since that time, they have undertaken a massively improved and up-to-date continuous improvement system. It includes people like Teri, who are extremely talented and came from Ford Motor Company, so she really knows her stuff in terms of technical quality, but they also have a remarkable set of people coming from GE and a lot of other wonderful quality organizations. They have put together a story down there that is absolutely remarkable. There are very few American companies that can stand toe-to-toe with FP&L with regard to a continuous improvement system, and literally no other utility, large utility that I've seen that is in their league. So they have much to teach us about an organized system for quality and continuous improvement. So with that, let me, if I might, hand it over. I'm going to go sit down, and we would ask Mike Niggli to come up here and tell us about SDG&E. Mike?
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here in Chicago. It's only a red-eye flight away. And some of the things I'd like to talk about today really sort of show the juxtaposition of what happened 10 years ago when the lights were out in California and where things are happening now. And also to give you an idea of really sort of what's going on the West Coast right now in terms of smart grid. I think every single one of us in this room has their own idea about what smart grid is, how it's going to apply to your customers or your clients, and where the end state of smart grid is at. I think what we'll find is that in the utility industry, all of us have different ideas around that too. But one thing I will tell you from our standpoint is that it's really driven, our smart grid effort is really driven by two things. One is our customer needs that we're seeing right now that are happening as we speak. And then secondly, by state policies that are being enacted and have been enacted and are really pushing things along in California. There are 4 areas that I can probably comment on very quickly that will give you a feel for this. 1 is renewable energy, 2 is solar photovoltaics, 3 is electric vehicles, and 4 is energy efficiency. First of all, on renewable energy. If you go back a decade ago, San Diego Gas and Electric had 1% of its energy from renewables, 1%. This year, we will finish the year at 20% renewable energy, a tremendous push. This is the largest mass transformation of our energy supply in the history of our company, and we're not done yet. As we finish one of our major transmission lines that's hooked up to a lot of renewables, in about 2014, we will be over 33%. We will be over 33%. For those of you who are systems engineers and understand what that means to the system, that means a tremendous amount of power that we used to control is now in the hands of Mother Nature, and we are reacting to that control. So from the smart grid standpoint, we have to have much better systems than we have today to create the same level of reliability and the same level of stability in the systems. Worries us because for the last 5 years in a row, after this decade-long effort, our company has been ranked #1 in electric reliability in the western United States the last 5 years and was #1 in the nation last year. So we've come a long way, but we're worried about those impacts that we're going to see as we get a lot of intermittent and non-controllable resources into the mix. Secondly, solar rooftops in particular. Okay, so how many solar rooftops do we have in Chicago? 2? No, I'm not sure how many. Not a lot, for a lot of different reasons. We have 14,000 systems in San Diego right now on rooftops that have been deployed, and that's the highest rate of growth that we've seen in any county in the United States, and it's growing at about 3% per month, 3% per month. So it's really creating some issues. The issues are when you put a solar photovoltaic on and it kicks in, all of a sudden you have a massive change in voltage levels at that home that shows its way up onto the grid. So now we're seeing 12,000 volt systems. They normally operate around 12,500 volts, and we're seeing 1,000-volt swings on our systems, significant swings all the time now in those circuits that have solar photovoltaic put on. Great challenge for the smart grid from a control system standpoint, and to make sure we don't wear out our equipment as we try to adjust the voltage levels on these systems. Third area would be electric vehicles. In terms of electric vehicles, there's been 2 runs at electric vehicles over the decades. Neither one of them were successful. This one's going to be successful. We're seeing so many manufacturers come in, especially Nissan and GM, and now you're seeing Ford. We're seeing a lot of folks who are putting tremendous amount of money. A lot of overseas players are coming in. Last year, 1 year ago, today, there were 5 electric vehicles in San Diego. San Diego is sort of a perfect climate because you don't have a harsh winter or extraordinarily hard summer, which are tough on batteries. Today, instead of 5 vehicles, we have 820 vehicles in San Diego, electric vehicles hooking up to the system. They are pulling 3 kilowatts. Right now, normally the Nissan Leafs pull about 3 kW. Typical house in San Diego's got an average demand of 6 kW. The next version of Leafs and Volts and things like that are going to be about 6 kW. So the equivalent of adding another house every time a car is put in somebody's driveway. So what we did to respond to that is we developed a patent. We have a patent on a smart transformer. So we may be putting smart transformers out, so if your cul-de-sac has 4 electric vehicles on it, maybe we can send signals to those vehicles to say, you can go full bore, we need you to stop right now. You can go half bore, wait till these other guys finish up, and then we'll finish you at 3 in the morning instead of right now. So I can foresee that kind of thing happening in our grid very shortly. And we have patents on Car Connect, a cable where you can take with you anywhere, and it will just essentially, ultimately, allow you to charge your car and then have the bill mailed to you or reflected on your billing, whatever billing you want. There's going to be tremendous breakthroughs in this area for electric vehicles as well. And the last one in California, you can't go anywhere in the nation without talking about energy efficiency in California. If you look at the rest of the nation for the last 30 years, the per capita consumption has gone up 50% per capita over a 30-year period. California's has gone up 2%. 2% per capita. Why? Because they have such a focus on energy efficiency. Why? How does that hit the smart grid area? Smart meters. Smart meters are the doorway, the gateway to energy efficiency in many areas. We just finished deploying all of our smart meters. I think we're the first company to finish that had smart meters that had both the home area network chip in them that allows you to communicate through and to the home, as well as the remote disconnect and remote turn-on switches that allows us to not have to send our troops out into somebody's house when they move from apartment A to apartment D. We just change the power by our call centers right now. So they call up and say, I want to shut it off at 4 o'clock on Friday. We put that into the computer, it's off. They want it turned on Saturday morning at a different address at 8:30, we can do that. So all of that without sending people out right now. That gives you a feel for some of the things that we're looking at in terms of smart grid and smart grid impacts. Again, they're driven by our customer needs and state policies, which are leading edge, oftentimes bleeding edge. And out of this, we are adding a tremendous number of new systems into our repertoire. But the thing that actually is probably most important for us as a company is with all of these changes and all of the new systems we're putting in, we are taking our professionals and we're putting them on a system. They work on that for a while, we pull them off, we put them onto another system, someone else fills in, and all of a sudden everybody is getting new capabilities, and the most important capability they're getting is flexibility and adaptability. And those capabilities will make them successful in the future and will help make us successful. So anybody who graduates from Illinois Tech, you can be very deep and steeped in your area, but if you come to work for us, we're going to give you a pretty broad platform that will help you in a lot of different places in the future. Thank you.
I wanted to first of all say thank you for having me here. I'm going to take you down a little bit of a different path than what Mike took you down. I'm actually going to go down the quality path. So you're not going to hear as much about smart meters with me. You're going to hear a little bit more about the quality and what we've done at NextEra Energy or FPL and how we integrate. We do work on the smart meters in my area, and my group is specifically supporting the smart meters and the rollout of smart meters and any issues that we may have with smart meters. But I'm going to take you on the path and the journey that FPL has had with quality. As we alluded to in the beginning, we won the Deming back in 1989, and ultimately we had a new regime come in and took, more or less, we decentralized the organization at that time. And at that time, it wasn't that we necessarily took a break, but with the decentralization, you could see some groups went gangbusters and still stayed engaged, and yet other groups that kind of took that time, oh, I have a break. And they went back and kind of rested back and didn't really engage much in quality at that point. I came to the company in 2005, and in 2007, I was brought on to take over a centralized group. I have a small centralized group of 11 people. The 11 people that I have, there's 7 of us that are master black belts. I have 1 black belt. And these individuals that I bring into my group are high potential candidates. What I mean by that, I bring them in from General Electric. I have some from Hamilton Sikorsky. I have one from Monsanto. I have one that is from Dell. So what I try and do is I try and grab individuals that are from other organizations that also have really strong programs. And the reason I do that is I try and bring people that have different skill sets into my organization that can offer a lot. And what we do with that is this group is only in these individuals are only in my organization for 1.5 years to 2 years. At that point, they are then pushed out into other areas of the organization to then, usually at a higher level. I only had an individual that just came in 10 months ago, and he's already out into the distribution unit. And he's actually heading the smart meter area in distribution. These individuals work on high-profile projects, and to give you an example of some of the high-profile projects that they work on, we've worked on inventory optimization, which we work on reducing the variation from plant to plant. We work on the peak load forecasting, so they worked on the whole load forecast for the state of Florida. So how are we going to roll that out every day? And then they're working on the 5-7-day forecast. The wind equivalent force outage rate. So out of all of our plants wind, we are the biggest wind provider in the United States, which a lot of you may not know that. We are the biggest renewable provider in the United States. So all the forced outage rates that happen throughout the wind plant, we had one individual that worked on every time a wind turbine goes out in our plant, we lose $1 million. So I had one of my individuals that supported all the forced outage rates for all the wind plants. He figured out how do we stop those forced outage rates. And then we worked on the gross write-off. So we work on a wide span of large projects that come directly from the executives. So anything that is an executive issue, a vice president issue, or cross-functional issue are the only issues that my group works on. Saying that, we then have small pockets of quality deployment leaders within each of the organizations. Those people are ultimately dotted lined up to my organization that work on small projects within each of their organizations. We have a total of 495 green belts in the company, 164 black belts, and 19 master black belts. With that, the influx started to happen in 2007 when we took over the program. So we're not big on numbers and stamping making sure that people are green belts or black belts. I'm very much against make sure people are green belts and black belts. We're very big on making sure people have the right project before they become a green belt or a black belt. We're more about making sure you use the right tools. So use Six Sigma. We also use Lean. We also use Kaizen. We also have an in-house tool which is called QI. We make sure that people are using the right tools at the right time. So we're not big on making sure that we force fit Six Sigma into everything. So we make sure that each individual, we give these tools to each of these individuals so they have it in their toolkit. So we teach them, use the right tool at the right time. So I'm not big on force-fitting Six Sigma into things. I'm not big on force-fitting Lean or certain tools. Make sure we give them these tools and use the right tool. So we've really been pushing the fact of don't necessarily push numbers in your organization. Make sure you're pushing the right projects and pushing the right tool set. We've actually just implemented a yellow belt program, which has been fantastic. We have now engaged the hourly people that have been, it's been more of a pull on their end, not a push on our end. We've been having people call us up, can I get involved? And when you get down to that level, them asking to get involved, that to me shows that the program is going great. My phone's ringing off the hook, how do I get into the program? How do I start taking these classes? And all they have to do at a yellow belt program is develop a process map and a control plan. And when they're doing that, that tells me that we're integrating it down at the lowest level. So to me, that is great. We also, every quarter, the one thing that we do is we hold a certification ceremony. When I came on board, we weren't rewarding these people, and it takes something so simple. So every quarter, we set up a certification ceremony where we have all the executives come, and as simple as giving out a plaque or a framed certificate, thanking them and telling them thanking them for all their hard work and telling them they did a great job. And we have them come up and we award them for getting through their certification. We also award them for what we call an MVP, which is most valuable project. So every individual that had submitted their project, we read them and evaluate them, and we give a most valuable project award out. We also, in April of every year, we have a competition for 10 projects. The best 10 projects, they have different rounds in each business unit, and the best 10 projects come forward, which are then evaluated by the entire executive panel. The executive panel then picks a winner of who represents our company at any quality event. Also, who in attendance is our board of directors. So that tells you that we have support from the top down. It's very important in our company that there is support from the top down. We also, in that same week, we have a Quality and Safety Expo, and it is now adding innovation this year. And in that expo, we have over 70 participants that set up different storyboards and booths, and we have over 1,200 employees that attend, and also we invite the customers from the outside to come in and tour the booths if they're interested in it. That has been a great catalyst for us. One other thing that before I end, some of the things that our group has been working on and that we've helped is to become more preventative, which smart meters has also definitely helped out within our group in the distribution side. Our group is very much involved in being preventative. We have monitoring in all of our plants and all of our distribution lines and all of our transmission areas. We have rooms that are dedicated to monitoring, alarming, everything, so we're ahead of the curve, so we know when something's going to occur before it occurs. And we use a lot of statistical tools to help with this, and that has proved to be very advantageous for our company. So I'd like to thank you and look forward to any questions.
Okay, well, I am back up here. I'm going to finish up with a little discussion from the ComEd perspective about where we're at and how we're thinking about this, and then we'll do a Q&A with the panel. You've heard from two companies that are further along in terms of a quality improvement, a smart grid implementation than we are at ComEd. And you've also heard from two companies that have a little bit of a different push in terms of coming at this. Their influences are coming from slightly different places. Mike talked about the big policy push in California, and that started a long time ago. At ComEd, the way we think about the influences that are driving change in our company and on the industry are really coming from the outside, and there's three of them. In essence, the economy, the change in our economic structure and our economic world, the change in the environmental culture or ethos, and the change really in the consumer culture and consumerism and what the digital world, the wireless world has done to that. In terms of the economic structure, we see 50% of our banking transactions online. We're expecting internet traffic to quadruple in the next 5 years. Data centers are one of our biggest growth industries here in our region. And so we're seeing this drive from the needs of our economy to create more quality in our business, a higher level of quality. It's not just about having a lot of juice, it's about having high quality power. And that's really being driven by what we're seeing out in the economy. The second change is in the area of the environment, and Mike talked a lot about the environmental policies in California, and we've seen them in Illinois the last couple years. We've got a renewable portfolio standard now. We're at about 8%, 9% renewable. That ramps up to about 25% in 2025. But we also have 25 megawatts of wind out in the western part of our state, and we're working on how to incorporate that into the grid. And not as much solar, but I think if Jay Marhofer has his way, we'll be seeing more solar in the near future. But there is a desire by customers and our society to see greener power. And then obviously the the consumer culture that is defined by a digital world. Access to information is infinite and choices abound, and response time on transactions has accelerated exponentially. You can shop online for a home. You can receive all sorts of information online about major purchases. Manufacturers provide all sorts of different choices. Sherwin-Williams has dozens of shades of blue and multiple levels of quality, and yet in our industry we pretty much provide you a one-size-fits-all kind of product. Everybody pays about the same price, you get the same quality, and there's really not much choice in it at all. So in a world of choice and control, our consumers, our customers are asking for us to change. So at this point, I would have had a slide that showed a horse, a 1950 Cadillac, and an electric car. But I don't have the slide, so you have to sort of envision that. So we've thought about the elements of a new model and what are the important elements of a new business model that we need to work on. And there are several. First, and both Mike and Teri talked a lot about this, is the notion of improved reliability, higher quality power, and that is where the new technology comes in. A mindset around avoiding outages rather than restoring. We want to avoid them in the first instance and not chase outages all day long, and that really requires a change in technology. Mike talked to you about his experience with the major blackout in his region and how they were able to bring that to an end and bring customers back in about 12 hours, which is amazing. And he did that with technology. We have a little bit of technology in different places on our system. We had an experience about a month ago with a transformer fire at Crawford substation, and it just sits on the outskirts of right along I-55, and you may have seen it on the news, big flaming transformer. The interesting thing about that incident is we do happen to have a little bit of smart grid distribution automation technology out in that area. It's a very sensitive area of our system. And what happened was when the transformer caught fire, we had a lot of load that shifted onto one little transformer, and it was way too much load for that transformer to handle. In the past, we would have sent people out into the field to switch, and it might have taken us hours to switch load off of that transformer. In the meantime, that transformer, which was incredibly overloaded, might not have held. What happened in this incident is we had distribution automation that automatically switched load off that transformer onto other places, and not a single customer had a power outage. And we had about 23,000 customers at risk with that. So those are the types of things that we want to do, avoid outages in the first instance rather than chasing outages. So this notion of quality and reliability and quality power is very important to us. The second, and Mike talked about this, as we see the generation sector become more distributed, the notion of being able to facilitate multi-directional communications and transactional becomes very important. And again, you need technology to be able to do that. Customers are going to want to buy and sell from the grid, and so that is an important concept that we're thinking about as we think about what the next evolution of our grid looks like. Third, as I noted, customers want choice. They want a product differentiated by resource type, by price, by service. They may want wind or solar as opposed to more traditional resources. Real-time pricing, peak rebate programs, there's all sorts of pricing options out there for customers, and when they find out about them, they're going to want them. And by service, we may see this sale of products by end use, lighting or cooling, rather than this one-size-fits-all type of product that we've sold. So we have been testing this in our pilot that we've set up, our smart grid pilot that we've had in place for about a year now. We've tested a number of different pricing options to see how customers respond to those different pricing options, and we're experimenting in this world of customer choice. Fourth, we believe that customer engagement will be critical as we make our way forward, and I think you heard that both in Mike's and Teri's remarks. Many customers may not want to involve themselves in energy use, but I think that when customers find out that there is more information available and that they have more potential control over this product, they may not want to be individually involved, but they may want communities to help them work through this. And we think the community model in this transformation is very, very important. And we're seeing this phenomenon in several ways already today in Illinois. One is municipal aggregation. In our service territory, we've had over 20 communities who have actually passed referenda supporting a supply purchase for their community. And we expect to see that load shift over the next year or so. And that's a very important community-driven dynamic that we have to deal with, that we are dealing with. I look at what Oak Park and some of our communities that are involved in the smart grid pilot have done in terms of bringing their residents together and helping them with information and education around energy efficiency. And just yesterday, OPower and Facebook announced a pilot that we will be involved in where they're going to actually offer Facebook access for customers. And it will provide customers with information about usage, aggregated usage by other like customers. And they will also allow customers not only to talk to utilities, but amongst themselves. So again, this notion of distribution, distributed knowledge and distributed action, and this notion of multi-directional action, we're already starting to see experimentation with it. So finally, we believe that the new model will require a culture of partnerships and to deliver the highest value to the customer. We think that there are many entities out there who understand different aspects of this new world in a way that we don't, and so partnering with OPower and Facebook and Center for Neighborhood Technology, who's worked with us on some of our pricing programs, those are going to be very important as we move forward. There's different pieces of the world that they understand and can bring that knowledge to bear as we put this new model together. So with that, I think we want to shift to some Q&A. And I'm asking the questions. But I would like to start out with both Mike and Teri have seen their companies move through tremendous change over a significant period of time, a decade or so or more. And I would like to ask, and I'll start with Mike, what are the most essential elements of that change in your mind? How do you drive a company forward? What do you need in place in order to accomplish that kind of change?
I can tell you. Can you hear me back there? Okay. A couple things that we did in this process, and everybody can do it a little bit differently. I don't think there has to be a cookie cutter here, but we actually started with the end in mind. We said, what is it we want to accomplish? What are our aspirations for our company? And we set up 5 aspirations. We actually set them up in terms of what are the rates we want to see for our customers, what are the operational excellence issues we have, what are the financial returns we want to get, how do we want to complete our major projects that we have, and customer satisfaction. So we started with that. We set some very strict goals of where we wanted to be. Most of them were measuring ourselves against the rest of the industry, whether it was a top quartile or top decile goal that we were going to set. We're going to make sure that we're in a position that we can measure it. And from a quality standpoint, this clearly is one of the things you have to do. You have to then populate those teams, and you have to move forward. One of the things we found as we set these aspirations is we couldn't make them without some significant changes from our status quo. And we had to destroy quite a few systems. We had to put into place some new innovative technologies. And they're the kind of things that all of our employees, from the top level to the front line, the folks who are driving our trucks and making things happen out in the field, they had to participate in terms of the new technologies. So we had a tremendous communication challenge in front of us. And that was one of the first things we did, was we communicated our strategic plan, and we communicated the elements that each one of our employee groups would have to play in terms of making sure this strategic plan would be successful. And at that point in time, we then went into the rollout of the various new technologies. And so we found a real need for people to be adaptable and flexible as they went through this. And we did a lot of things to try to unfreeze people from their current positions, unfreeze them from their thoughts around the previous utility model, and then make sure that we could go forward in a way that really met our customers' needs. So we saw a lot of the need for flexibility and adaptability, and this is really key in California because the bar kept getting higher and higher, whether it was renewable energy or it was energy efficiency or it was solar power or electric vehicles or reliability. We had to be there. And a couple of things that happened along the way. Our company was named smartest utility in the United States for a couple of years in a row. That was sort of cool. We don't know how that happened. We didn't vote, we didn't vote for that. But at the end of the day, it really reflected sort of California being in this position of pushing a lot of things and us having to be adaptable to make those kind of things happen. So it's been a very interesting journey, but I think one that, as I look forward now, we're in a much better position to take on the challenges of the future because I think we have a culture that is got a mindset that is broader than it had certainly half a decade ago or a decade ago.
Thank you.
The biggest thing for us was you have to have the executive support, and when you're talking around quality, it has to be a top-down approach. And the biggest thing you have to have is then alignment to your strategic imperatives. So as you work on things, you have to have everything has to be aligned to your strategic imperatives. And it has to be your goals throughout the company. You have to have alignment through any goals that you set on your performance reviews and anything along those lines. Everything has to be aligned. And you have to have metrics. The biggest thing is make sure you're measuring. You can't improve something you're not measuring. So a lot of times what you see is what people set out on their strategic imperatives, or what you see people set on their company goals, or something that can't be measured. And it's something very lofty. And those are the biggest things that can make you move your company in the right direction. So you always have to make sure that what you're setting up is quality driven and you have quality goals. That's the way you change the mindset of your company to make it more of a quality driven company and to become more preventative versus reactive. Those are the biggest things that can take you from where you're at to make you more of a quality mindset company.
Teri, did the way you measure or what you measure change as you went through the
Absolutely. The biggest thing is one thing when I started out in my role, I started working with all the business units and looking at all of their strategic plans and had to go through all of them and figure out how they were looking at their strategic plans and the linkage. So I started out with the CEO's strategic imperatives and then would have to link them all the way down and say, okay, how are you linking up and how are you measuring? And is it an accurate measure? And are you going to react to this measure? So a lot of times what we find is that you may be measuring something, but are you going to do anything about it? So if you're measuring something, but yet you're not going to react to it or not do anything with it, don't bother measuring it. So that's a lot of times what people need to start looking at is you need to measure what's important. So when you're looking at these smart meters, you need to be measuring what you're going to react to and what you're going to do with it, what you're going to do. So what's important about it.
Great. Mike, did you find any change in how you were looking at your metrics?
Yeah, actually, one of the things we found is something that normally doesn't get measured in our business is something we call cycle time. The ability to actually improve your cycle time in whatever process you have frees up resources, makes your company much more efficient, and gets your customers the lowest possible cost. And so every time we would go into a new process mapping or a new process review, and folks would come to me, it was so interesting that they hadn't tackled the cycle time issue. And so we started making sure that, one, everybody had a cycle time measurement along the way, but two, also you have a devil's advocate on your team. One of the things that we found very helpful to us in trying to improve quality is that you got somebody on the team who is just taking pot shots at you and trying to make sure you know where the problems are in your process that you're renovating or you're trying to replace, so that you don't inadvertently end up re-engineering something and having 3 times as many problems. So I think having that discipline is actually something that we learned along the way as well.
Thanks. What'd you find your biggest hurdle to be, your biggest challenges?
You know, our biggest hurdle, and clearly at first, was unfreezing our employee population and trying to make sure that our human resources were going to be as effective later on as the new technologies we're going to be bringing in. So whenever you think about the advances you're going to make, start with the human resource. And that's one of the areas where I think we are extraordinarily pleased with the results to date, is that having a team that has come a long way, and you can sort of see that progress in a lot of the things you do, because every time we launch a new initiative now, the first questions that come up are, well, how are we going to communicate with the employees? How are we going to communicate with the customers? How are we going to make sure this is the right solution that is going to have the quality aspects to it and also end up with the least cost solution? So we get a lot of those agonizing questions now that we never got before, and I think that's a sign of sort of growth in this area. But ultimately it comes down to that human capability for change. You can overdo it, and if you try to overdo it and the organization can sort of have the wheels come off, you're going to take 3 steps back. So not only do you have to think about the change, but you have to think about the pace of change and how much new do you introduce to ensure you can be successful overall.
In my area, the biggest, hardest part, the biggest hurdle that we faced was making sure people realize that, you know, even though we were deploying Six Sigma per se, is teaching them to use the right tool at the right time, because to them Six Sigma was the flavor of the month, and you know, they had gone through the Deming, they had done that, and quality a lot of time is changed, and they think that is a flavor of the month and that something new is going to roll in. So it's teaching them that, you know, Six Sigma is just another tool in your toolbox, and that we want you to learn that, hey, this is just another tool in your toolbox, and we want you to take it and apply it with all your other tools that you already have, and teaching them, hey, we just want you to use the right thing at the right time. So it was changing the mindset a little bit, and makes it difficult.
Jim, did you have a question you wanted to pose?
I have a million questions running through my mind, and it's going to be more than we have time for. But there are a couple of things for each of you that I think are remarkable that we haven't heard. We heard only a brief mention of. Mike, you mentioned that you guys have developed a patent for a couple of different important pieces of gear. Could you give us why is what is the corporate policy with regard to developing patents, and how does that wind up in someone else's goals? And for Teri, if you could give us kind of a linkage between the things you're doing at the project level and continuous improvement and what shows up by way of yield in those wind farms all around the United States and North America. So Mike, if you first.
In the area of patents and sort of just intellectual property, we are not an intellectual property company. Most utilities are not. We leave that to everybody else. We're considered to be, what was that model you had, the horse and the carriage?
Yeah.
Was that? Okay. Something like that.
59
but,
Cadillac and the,
you know, we want to be the fastest horse around and the fastest carriage. But in terms of intellectual property, we generally don't have a specific model that says, you know, we're going to go out and put 5 patents up for posting in this next year. We actually do it when we find our engineers and our scientists and our customer service people are taking on a particular challenge, and if they have what we think is a unique solution, a very unique solution, and we're willing to fund the patent process, which you have to fund it, it doesn't come free, and you have to defend it and all of that, and then you have to market it and deploy it, we will make a corporate decision around whether we're willing to do that. So we don't have a specific process other than as each entity is going through and each department is going through their review on these types of things. There's one thing I wanted to mention also in the quality area, and this has to do with measurements. When you start measuring things, very interesting things happen, and they're great because people start to pick up on that and they start doing it on their own. And one of the things we've had happen with a little bit of focus, but our safety numbers have improved enormously, and we have a business where people die if things go wrong. And we have, over the last 4 to 5 years, reduced the number of incidents by 50%, the number of severe incidents by over 60%. It is just phenomenal, and that we have so many more people going home safe and sound to their families, which is great.
I think what Jim was referring to is looking at my total return on, the Six Sigma program or the program in general. With our certification, when we have brought all our training in-house, and by bringing all my training in-house, my return with just the certification process alone, it's an 80x return. So we have an 80x return last year. On average, I've had an 80x return on this program the past 4 years. And that's only with certification projects alone. That does not count the projects that my team is doing or other teams are doing that are not within certification. So that other stuff is just gravy because it doesn't cost me anything really to do those other projects. We do charge those out to the business units. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of it. It's fantastic. It's a great thing. So we actually are involved in the budgeting process for each business unit. So they're given a dollar amount. Actually, they're told that they have to save maybe each year 10%. They're not told how to do it, but a lot of them will say, hey, I'm going to use quality tools to help save it. They don't have to necessarily use quality tools, but most of them have decided that's the route they're going to go because they have seen the fruits of their labor.
80x ROI. I mean, think about that for a moment. Spend $1,000 and save $80,000. It is a remarkable return. John Kelly and I came back from Florida Power and Light, and we had just had our socks knocked off, and we saw what they were doing down there. Particularly, as Terry mentioned, they are the largest producer of wind energy. Is it North America or the world? In North America. They've got this remarkable control center that is so focused on the prevention of outages and getting at it before the windmill goes down, and so focused on intelligent usage of the wind itself, that they're making money in ways that other companies are losing money, bottom line. And as they do that, if you look at things like our core stuff in quality, yield rates, defect rates, prevention, systems approaches, some things that are really kind of nuts and bolts stuff, they really have applied those to a fairly well in ways that their competitors have not. And so my suggestion for the audience is that this quality stuff can be transplanted from the things that are inside your organization to the other areas that you reach.
I think we have somebody with a microphone going around. Thank you. If we've got questions from the audience at this point. Thank you. Right over there.
Insightful presentations. My name is Mike Jung. I work at Silver Spring Networks. What are some of the opportunities and challenges presented by the pending or forthcoming turnover in the utility workforce? The demographics of the utility workforce are somewhat unique, I think, in many ways, and I'm just wondering if our speakers could comment on that, particularly in the context of the smart grid stuff that we're trying to put out at the same time.
Actually, my group does a lot of analysis on looking at the economy as well as the trending workforce to try and figure out where do we need to start looking for labor and where do we need the labor ahead of time so we can try and be ahead of the curve. Granted, I don't know how far ahead of it we can get, especially we have some nuclear plants. I know that may not be great around here, but we actually have 5 of them. We're doing our best to try and stay ahead of the curve. I think we're doing a pretty good job of it. I think we're going to be okay, except in nuclear. I'm not positive how well we're going to do, but I think we're doing all right with all our training and trying to stay ahead of the curve on that. That's the best I can answer on that.
I think we're going to see a pretty significant change in sort of how people do work in the future. We're not going to have the meter readers, thanks to your company and others from that standpoint. So, but we're going to need people who are analyzing all the data. From that, we're going to need people who understand how to make our processes more efficient. We're also going to be in a position where, frankly, we're going to be partnering with a lot of other firms. We're just seeing that now. I think all of us are seeing that the value of partnering with the experts in the industry or people who have a different opinion or viewpoint than we do as bringing value to sort of how we do our business. So I don't necessarily have to have, all of the brains in my company if I can have partnerships with people who are experts in these areas. We just filed our smart grid deployment plan in California. I think we were the first company in the U.S. to have this big, thick plan that actually was filed with the PUC that said this is the roadmap we want to do over the next X number of years. And that particular roadmap changes the way things are done for the future. So I think you're going to see our workforce is going to migrate towards either the smart grid end of it or utilization of applications that are smart grid oriented, much more so. We're always going to need, though, frankly, a lot of vocational people who can continue to ensure that all of our bread and butter infrastructure is put up well and maintained well.
I would just add to that, and I think Teri will appreciate this. There's, I read the sign in the Ford strategy room says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I love that because I think, and Mike has stated this in conversations that we've had, is that it's, at the end of the day, really being able to drive this forward and make it work is really about culture. And we've got some culture change to get our arms around in our business. And I think there's an opportunity, if we recognize that, to make that shift. I think we've got to, we're here talking about a culture of quality and raising the bar on that. And it's also about a culture of customer focus. And not that our industry hasn't had it, but it's different today. Customers really want different things today. They have different expectations today. And that's all, been driven by the change that we've seen around us. And our industry is, behind that curve a little bit. And so understanding that and being able to put together the people who can bring that to bear on what you're doing, I think is critically important. But I think the core of getting this done and getting it done well for our customers is about making sure the culture is established, and that's something that has to be done over the next, for us in the next 5 to 10 years, and it's, never easy to do. Other questions? Well, I'm going to finish with one question for both Mike and Teri, and that is next steps. What's on the horizon for you? If we could end with those thoughts, that would be terrific.
Yeah, we want to prevent any more blackouts. No fun. And actually, some of you may know a little bit about it, but when you black out an entire city, interesting things happen. But how our grid works with others, because the problem did not start in our grid. It started in another state, and then it spread through 5 different balancing authorities before it got to San Diego and pulled us down. But it pulled down 7 million people. Half of them were in Mexico. A lot were in Arizona, and then the rest in California. So we are an interconnected society, and I think we have to work on that. I will tell you one thing that we're focusing on real carefully is just how do we communicate with our customers as well. During this blackout, the moment the blackout happened, everybody reached for their cell phone. Every single person in Southern California reached for their cell phone, and guess what? No cell service. You could not get through to anybody because the wireless network collapsed. Landlines are okay, but the wireless network collapsed. So, how do you communicate? We started tweeting. This was the biggest Twitter event in our history. We had, at 14 minutes after it started, we tweeted, and we had 130 tweets to get information out to our customers. Great lesson about the power of social media and how you can utilize it. So I think one of the next steps we have is how do we continue to gather upon the momentum of the technological revolutions in communications to use it to the benefit for the benefit of our customers and in so many different ways. So doing that, I think, is going to be one of our focuses, because we have a lot of changes around rate structures that will go with new meters, time of use date prices. All of that you'll have to put in. You'll have to put in incentives for people to charge their electric vehicles off-peak, and it's all about communication. And I think that will be one of our areas of focus.
What we continue to work on is the prevention aspect. How can we continue to enable our, we have, like I said, 3 centers, so we keep building in more and more prevention on the end, and how can we use the smart meters to make that grow even more. And then we're also rolling in more innovation. So the innovation aspect, to incorporate that in the quality end of it. We have a conference coming up for all Master Black Belts and Black Belts where we have an innovation conference, so we're really excited about that. And like I said, the innovation is being included in the expo this year, so innovation is becoming a big part of our culture. So
That's great.
that's where we're looking for in the future. So.
Well, we appreciate your thoughts. Mike Niggli from San Diego Gas and Electric, Teri Ivaniszyn from Florida Power and Light, and Jim Buckman, thank you very much, from the Galvin Electric Initiative. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day.